Today I'm going to show you my new hydroponic build, as you can see in the background here. I'm going to give you an overview of the garden and how I made this system. It took me about 4 or 5 days of working on it, anywhere from 1 hour to 3 hours of working. I'd say probably a total of 8 hours total. It's an 8-plant system. I tied it into this system so that I wouldn't have to buy a new pump and reservoir. As you can see, it just comes out of this one, tees off, and comes out over here and goes into every bucket. I have valves on every bucket so that I can control how much water goes into each bucket. This is important because I don't have a very strong pump, so I'm able to slow down the flow on certain buckets to make sure every bucket has some flow. I'm going to put squash in these. I have cucumber here, then zucchini, butter baby squash, and yellow straight neck squash. A new thing that I'm trying is I left extra pipe at the end here so that I can pour in nutrients into this elbow right here, and I'll just put it directly into the system. I've tried it once. It worked quite well because the basin on this system is not that easy to add nutrients in. So I built it pretty far out because I assume these plants are going to get pretty wide, so I hope to still have access to this elbow, but I'm not sure that I will. We'll see if it works or not. So here's a view of the side view of all the buckets. I use Lowe's buckets because they're colored, so I don't need to paint them. They're BPA free and also food grade. I double checked all this information. I would also double check it at your Lowe's just to be sure. At my Lowe's this was the case, so I went with these buckets. As you can see, they have the grommet coming out here, 1/2-inch pipe, 1/2-inch elbow, 1/2-inch drilled into here. All I did was I didn't have a 1/2-inch circle saw or circle hole bit, so what I did was I just drilled a hole with the biggest bit that I had and then sanded it out with the Dremel that I have. That was probably the most tedious part, was drilling out the holes, making them as close to perfect as you can, putting in the grommet and putting in the tube. I use soap water to help the tube slide in, but it's a pretty snug fit because you don't want it to leak. With these buckets I made them higher, the exit tube, so that the water would fill all the way up. The difference is that I didn't have to caulk around here or here. So that was nice. That was kind of just an extra step that I avoided doing. As you can see on these buckets, I had to do this because the weight of the water level's up here. So the water level had enough weight to it to force the pressure. It would just spring a little bit of a leak. This system's basin is much easier to add nutrients in, so I didn't really bother. I thought about putting an elbow over here, but it's not really worth it. I just pop the lid open and dump all the nutrients in that basin, and it goes directly into the system. Here's where it tees off. You can see right here. So I modified this system also because the aero spray tubes were kind of clogging up, and I've been thinking about modifying it. So what I ended up doing to get better flow was I just continued with the black hose. It's 5/8 or 1/2-inch over to here, and then I drilled 2 holes in the side there, and what that does is just drops off the water in the end, and it goes all the way down the rail and back into the basin. I have a couple of valves here also to control flow. That way I make sure each rail in each bucket gets its fair share of water and nutrients. I have some peppers planted here and some squash and zucchini also. Bunch of peppers over here. Eventually the lettuce will come out. I'm gonna harvest them soon. We've had so much lettuce that we just haven't eaten it all yet. As you can see, this was a tester. What I ended up doing was just pulling it out. I had so many of them, I pulled it directly out of the soil, ripped a bunch of the roots, and I just wanted to see if it would take or not. It might still take, but we'll see. This butter baby squash that I have, I bought one thing from Lowe's, and it came with, I think, 13 plants in the one little tub. I think it was $3 or $4. And what I ended up doing was splitting them all off, so they kind of got a little bit of root shock, but I think only one of them died, so I ended up getting about 12 plants out of the bunch for only $4, so it's pretty good. So I have 2 of them here. The stand that I used for the hydroponic system is actually an old table that was given to me for free. I was going to make a really nice wooden table out of it. I might still do that, but for now it's going to be a hydroponic system. I just put fence boards on top to support the weight. There's cross members right here, there, and there's a couple more back there to keep. So I put each bucket over a cross member to support the weight, because I would assume the bucket is probably, each bucket's probably about 30 pounds or so, maybe 20 to 30 pounds. So about 80 to 100 pounds on this table. But it's holding the weight nicely. The way that I tie it in the system, the water discharges here right into where the water drops down back into the basin. So this rail and the buckets are draining into the basin here. This side is just running on its own. So what I ended up doing was, this is where the old aeroflow tubes came in. So all I did was turn them upwards so that the water level would have to rise up and out of the bucket for it to leak out of here. I was thinking about how to kind of clog this, or plug it up, or with something, maybe caulking or something, but it was easiest just to turn it up, and there won't be any algae growing in there because there's no water to be seen. The one thing that I need to work on, I haven't really figured out, is I need to cover this with something so that no light gets in, because algae will start to grow in here, and then the whole system will have algae. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. As you can see, it's pretty wide, so I was thinking maybe plastic, cut a hole that will barely fit around the elbow, but it'll sit here flat to kind of go like this, but I'm not really sure. I'm taking out the cabbage plants finally. I figured I'd show you what the root zone looks like. So that's what grows inside the bucket over here. Pretty cool. As you can see, there's a bunch of baby cabbages that I'm going to be harvesting right now. And then I'm going to transplant the tomatoes into the bucket that the cabbage was in. I was able to get 9 cabbage from that one plant. What was pretty cool that I noticed was some of them that I thought I clipped. I did clip them, but as you can see here, it was still growing. So it was still getting bigger. As you can see, I kind of cut it off right here when I harvested the big cabbage because it was just hard to get in there. So as long as you leave just a small amount, it'll still keep growing into a small cabbage. So there's 9 of them, so we'll eat these in the next couple of days, put them in the fridge, and they'll stay for a few days. I transplanted the tomatoes over here. I have 1 tomato plant in each. The reason why I built this one so high was I built it specifically for tomatoes so that they can come down off and grow downwards, kind of like a topsy-turvy. And it worked really well last year, so I can just, the tomatoes are all along the side here, so I can just pick them by hand quite easily because the plant's just hanging there. It's still off the ground, so there's no pests or anything. The only problem I had was rats coming in and eating the tomatoes. Here's all the extra tomatoes that I have. I already started giving some away to friends and family. The jalapeno plant is going to overwinter. It's already putting out jalapenos. So as you can see, it's the middle of April. We got a jalapeno already growing. Very nice. Here's all the extra squash that I have. Squash and a couple of cucumbers. The broccoli's getting close. The seeds are about the right height, but the plant just needs to die out, and then I'll be able to harvest all the seeds from it. Do a quick garden update. Garlic's doing great. As you can see, all the rows growing. Grapes doing well. This plant right here is going to do really well. There's a bunch of grapes already growing, or flowers that are going to flower then turn into grapes. I ended up just cutting out all the tomatoes here because it wasn't going to make it, or it didn't make it. Onions doing well, as you can see, the ones that we replanted that were in the pantry. Strawberry patch, starting to kick out some nice strawberries. You can see they're white. In the children's pool, reused. This one's starting to grow back. I drilled a hole in it a little bit late, so it kind of flooded itself, so it kind of struggled a little bit, but it's got new growth coming in. Avocado trees and some rosemary. I planted some melons here, and I planted some green beans all along that black hose in the back. So the plan is to put squash or cucumbers or zucchinis all the way along the back, and then I'll have some green beans all along the front here. So I'm just waiting for those to pop up out of the ground. We'll be good to go. Potatoes back there doing well, and blueberry plant is doing well. It's going to kick out a bunch of blueberries. As you can see, this pepper plant also overwintered, so I should be getting some peppers pretty soon here. There's new growth starting to come in. You can kind of see it here. It's looking nice. Here's the grapefruit tree. As you can see, there's a bunch of blossoms on it, but at this point last year is where they all fell off, so you can see there's a fruit growing right here, but I don't know, I really hope that they'll stay on this year. I don't know what happened last year. I read that either too much fertilizer or water at one point in time can kind of overwhelm the tree. It'll just drop all its fruit and flowers. So I really hope to get some grapefruit this year to test it out, see if I like this variety or not. So that's my garden right now. It'll continue to evolve throughout the season. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.